Hello everyone, I am Pratiksha and today we are going to learn something about international trade. Now, I know that this is one of those topics that is not a regular part of our academic textbook, but something that is an integral part of the global economy that we all contribute something to. So it becomes very important as student of economics to know something about international trade and to understand its major implications. So, without much ado, I would like to straight away begin with what is international trade in simple terms. International trade is all about the exchange. It's all about the economic transactions between the countries. तो जब भी दो countries एक दूसरे के बीच में goods और services को trade करती हैं, for example, the country India and China, right? We trade, for example, toys with China, right? In return, we get some money. So that is a very simple and very simple definition of what trade is all about. तो जो भी economic transaction होते हैं दो countries के बीच में, which includes not just goods but also services, is referred as the international trade. But a major criteria international trade का यही है कि जो भी goods और services हम trade करते हैं, it should cross the territorial boundaries and territorial waters of the country. It is when that they cross the same, we say that it is international trade. Next, trade is something which is a major, important, and an integral part of the economy. Hamari total economy is often defined with what we consume, what is invested, and finally what the government does, right? But what is more important and what is equally important in all of this is trade. इन सबसे इक्वल ट्रेड है जितना ज्यादा कंट्री में नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स रहता है ट्रेड सरप्लस रहता है हम कहते हैं इकोनॉमी उतना ही अच्छा परफॉर्म करती है इकोनॉमी इतना पंप होती है सो इट इज ट्रू बोथ फॉर डोमेस्टिक इकोनॉमी एज वेल एज ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी and finally when it comes to trade the most significant part of trade is that it builds cultural relationship it enhances contacts between the people and that is what is one of the underlying benefit that we receive while trading with the nations. Next, we will try to talk about the different aspects and the dimensions of international trade, right? So international trade का सिर्फ एक ही facet नहीं है that we can see it from the lens of economics, but it is something that is dominating a lot of discourses. It dominates economics, it dominates international relations, as well as हमारे social relationship भी international trade से बहुत हद तक affect होते हैं. So when we talk about economy, it's all about when international trade happens, it boosts economy, it pumps the global economy. When trade happens, it builds supply chains. Now, what are supply chains? For example, China में कोई भी good को produce किया गया, right? उसकी starting China में हुई, then after that उसमें कुछ value add India में हुई, and finally finishing for suppose Indonesia में हुई. So this is how we build some chains, right? It started from China, it went to India, and then it finally finished at Indonesia. And then the goods were distributed all over the world. This is how we create supply chains. So trade creates supply chains. Then it's about international relations. आज आप कोई भी country हो, there is any country, whichever, whenever any country signs any agreement with other country, trade is the focal point. We want to know that what type of trade the country holds with each other, right? Is the trade flourishing, right? Is it doing well? If it's flourishing, then it is important, right? The country is a significant partner of the other country, right? So trade एक बहुत ही dominating role play करता है हमारे relationship में, right? Bilateral agreements, multilateral agreements, trade is always the focal point of those agreements. And today in the 21st century, the picture is that those nations who have been doing well on the trade lines, who have been exporting much, who have been a significant part of this trading basket, those countries are actually becoming the power center. And a major example of the same is China. And finally, we will talk about the social impacts. किस तरीके से ट्रेड ने कल्चरल कॉन्टैक्ट्स को इम्प्रूव करा. ट्रेड ने सिर्फ गुड्स और सर्विसेज को एक्सपोर्ट नहीं करा, ट्रेड में कल्चर भी ट्रेड हुए. ट्रेड इन द सेंस दैट इट वाज समथिंग व्हिच हैपेंड इनडायरेक्टली. We got to know that what America as a culture has to offer, what China is about, right? So cultural contacts, social contacts, they also got boosted when international trade reached to its peak. And then there's a small graph which I have taken from the WTO website, which talks about that how what type of trade has happened in the past years of the world. It shows the graph from 2005 quarter 1. So as we can see how from 2005, merchandise trade volume is indicated by a blue line. And we can observe that how it has been showing an upward sign. It of course went to a bit downfall in 2009. That is also a result of a financial crisis, a global financial crisis which had happened in that period. And again, it again picked up. What is trade volume? Trade volume is all about trade surplus. Jitna bhi export hota hai, that is referred as the trade volume. So we can see that how it is flourishing, having an uptick, and then it goes straight away till 2020. And then in 2020, we all know what happens to the world. There is this big slowdown, big recession, COVID-19 comes into the picture, and we reach at the lowermost level of the graph, right, over here. So ये एक बहुत ही pessimistic scenario है जो हम नहीं चाहते थे, but it happened, right? And from here we can observe that what kind of growth we had expected. ये growth हम expect कर रहे थे, ये एक growth है जो हमारी जिस तरीके से growth हो रही है ये वो depict करता है. And finally, optimistic scenario is what we had expected, that if COVID would had happened, then in best scenario our slowdown should be till here. But it went a bit, not a bit, but actually a lot more than that has happened. And finally, the recovery would of course be really very not on the levels that we had expected to, but it is expected by major organizations that the world economy would bounce back. Next. Next, it's about World Trade Organization, one of the organizations that has been looking after trade for a long, long time. Now, what is this organization all about? In simple words, making it easier for the country and providing them a negotiating platform, right? So if I want to have a trade deal with China, right, it is just providing me a platform for the same, right? Negotiations would happen on this platform, right? Its purpose is to liberalize trade. World Trade Organization, it's meant to promote trade, right? You shouldn't be putting restrictions, right? आप restrictions नहीं रख सकते. Trade को open up करना है, ना कि quotas रखने हैं, tariffs रखने हैं, duties रखनी है. ऐसे कोई भी measures अगर हम रखेंगे तो हम trade को discourage कर रहे हैं. We want a scenario where we are working in the interest of trade, right? So that is what World Trade Organization has been established with. Its job is to operate the global system of trade rules, provide a platform for the countries to negotiate, and also in the underlying objective of World Trade Organization is to raise the standard of living and to improve people's lives holistically by means of trade. And finally, I would like to end with talking about the challenges in international trade. The challenges in international trade are summed up in 3 core headlines, which are actually dominating our discourse on what is going wrong. So the first thing that we talk about is erosion in nation sovereignty. Now, what has been a problem? What I talked to you about earlier, that how trade is dominating the relationship between nations, right? Now, I cannot just break off with any country at any point of time, right? अगर मैं उस कंट्री के साथ बहुत ही स्ट्रॉन्ग ट्रेड रिलेशनशिप में हूँ, उस कंट्री के साथ मैं बहुत इंपोर्ट्स लेती हूँ या मैं बहुत एक्सपोर्ट कर सकती हूँ, इट्स नॉट इजी फॉर मी टू ब्रेक ऑफ दैट रिलेशनशिप, right? And itna easy nahi hai with what World Trade Organization has been set up. It's making the rules and making it very difficult for the country to operate in a way that it wants to, right? Many domestic policies are now going to be significantly impacted with what WTO wants, right? So I'm not free. At the end of the day, there is an indirect pressure on my nation which will constantly be there in terms of policies to come up with. My policies should be such that it promotes trade. For example, I don't want my producers to face that type of competition, so I can provide them restrictions, but WTO won't allow me to do so. So that is a major challenge. Then there is a big challenge that how our goods, our domestic goods, will fight with the foreign goods, right? So because we are not allowed to deal with the goods the way we want to, WTO प्रेशर्स रखता है, WTO के पास वो प्रेशर मैकेनिज्म्स हैं, तो जरूरी नहीं कि हमारे प्रोड्यूसर्स, हमारे फार्मर्स उन गुड्स के साथ compete कर सकें. And finally, it's often complained कि जो भी WTO करता आ रहा है, जिस तरीके से trading rules हैं, वो सब बने ही इस तरीके से गए हैं that it promotes the benefit and interest of the developed nation. It has never taken care of what the global south wants. It never takes care of what the developing nations wants. So बहुत ही ज़्यादा difficulty यहीं पे point पे आके रुकती है. So I would like to end with all the challenges of international trade. But one thing that can go well is what we as students propose, what the government can do collectively. Jitne zyada negotiations honge, we can improve upon these challenges. And yes, this is it. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please provide me a feedback on my email ID.